We tend to picture space as this vast, empty stage where all the cosmic action unfolds. Just nothingness, mostly.
Right, that's the standard view. But what if that emptiness isn't so empty after all? Like, what if it's more like a fluid under tremendous pressure, constantly active and, influencing everything within it?
That's quite a different picture.
Yeah.
Is that what we're exploring today?
Oh, that's the exciting shift in perspective we're exploring.
Yeah. We're diving deep into the Flowfield Hypothesis. It's a really intriguing idea, offers a new way to understand gravity, the universe's structure.
Okay.
And our goal today is really to pull out the core concepts for you, see how it stacks up against the standard model, and maybe uncover some surprising implications, without getting totally lost in the weeds, technically speaking.
Right, keep it focused. And we're basing this on simulation records.
Exactly. Our journey is guided by records from these extensive simulations, specifically designed to test this pressure-based view of space.
Okay. And you mentioned simulations, multiple phases. Yeah, we're looking at 8 distinct phases of simulations. Each one probes a different aspect of this whole hypothesis.
8 phases, wow.
And they're not just abstract theory. Think of them as virtual labs exploring everything from the basic behavior of the spatial pressure
Right.
to truly mind-bending stuff, like interactions between universes, even potentially tweaking local physics.
Okay, modifying physics. We'll definitely get to that. So it covers a huge range then, from the basics in phase 1.
All the way to phase 8, yeah. Phase 8 looks at incredibly complex ideas, like creating the illusion of infinite space.
Seriously?
Seriously. And along the way, we see simulations exploring complex interactions, potential engineering uses, ways to contain energy using these fields, even ideas about the end of the universe and connections to other universes.
All right, let's jump in. The absolute core of this Flowfield hypothesis. It's about gravity, right? But not gravity as we usually think of it.
Correct. Forget the simple image of matter pulling other matter across empty space. That's not the picture here.
So what is it?
The Flowfield hypothesis suggests gravity isn't quite a fundamental force in the way we normally think. It's more emergent.
Emergent. From what?
From tension and pressure within this dynamic spatial medium. Think of a river that's under a lot of tension.
Okay.
Objects in that river aren't pulled downstream by some separate force, right? They're carried by the currents that naturally form.
They just go with the flow.
Exactly. And in this model, matter concentrations create higher pressure zones in space. And other matter then tends to drift towards these zones.
Because of pressure differences. Like rolling downhill, but with pressure.
Precisely. It's movement along pressure gradients, not a direct pull between objects.
Okay, that's clear. So movement with the flow. Let's look at phase I then, those initial simulations. What did they tell us about this pressure field?
Phase I really laid the groundwork. One key simulation looked at the super high pressure of the very early universe.
Right after the Big Bang.
Yeah. And what it showed was, instead of just dissipating, this pressure might have stabilized into a kind of rhythmic pulse.
A pulse. So space itself has a heartbeat, almost.
In a manner of speaking, yes, a fundamental dynamism built right in. Another simulation mapped this pressure in 2D.
And what does that look like?
It showed distinct zones, high-pressure peaks, you could call them, and lower-pressure areas, they called them drift valleys.
And drift valleys. So those would be the natural pathways for matter to move.
That's the idea, exactly. Natural channels through the cosmos.
And was the movement just random within those valleys? You mentioned something about memory.
Ah, yes. Good point. Another simulation tracked the motion along these gradients, and it wasn't just based on the immediate pressure.
No.
No, it seemed influenced by the field's memory of where pressure had been before, like space remembers past configurations.
Space remembers. That's a fascinating concept.
It really is, and maybe one of the most intriguing phase I simulations was the magnetic bubble one.
Magnetic bubbles, like the ones Voyager saw.
Exactly like those. It managed to recreate those complex, bubbly structures of interstellar magnetic fields. This hinted that space isn't uniform nothingness. It has structure.
Tied to these memory fields.
Possibly linked, yeah. So maybe those huge magnetic structures aren't just from complex particle physics, but a property of space itself.
Wow, okay. That alone is a big shift. And there was a lensing simulation, too. Bending light. That sounds like it's bumping up against Einstein.
It does, yeah. This simulation explored how space-time curvature light bending might arise directly from the pressure field.
Not from mass.
Well, the finding was remarkable. Gravitational lensing could occur just from differences in the tension of space, without needing a massive object in the traditional sense.
Just the stretchiness of space itself.
Exactly. Tension gradients alone can create the curve that light follows. So if we see light bending around seemingly empty space...
Could be the spatial tension at work. Okay. Mind. Blown already. So phase I sets the stage. What about phase II? Complex interactions and this memory idea.
Phase 2 built right on that, looking at more intricate dynamics. One really cool simulation was the resonant tone overlay.
Resonant tones, like sound.
Sort of. By applying specific frequencies, think musical notes, almost to the pressure field, they showed the shape of space could be influenced, even steered.
Steered by resonance.
Yeah, like vibrating a drum head. Different frequencies make different patterns. Here, space is the drum head.
Guiding space with sound.
Wait.
That's wild. What about the quantum echo ripple? Sounds small, but maybe significant.
Precisely. They put a tiny disturbance into a smooth field and observed a ripple spreading out, but crucially,
Yes.
it left subtle, lasting changes in the structure of space. Tiny quantum events could leave permanent, maybe small marks on reality's fabric.
Like ripples on a pond that never quite vanish.
A good analogy, yeah. Even a tiny pebble changes the surface forever, just a little bit.
And the collapse boundary simulation. Did that relate to things like black holes?
It did. It modeled what happens when a region inside a field gets extremely compressed. Looking at where it breaks down gave new insights into gravitational collapse.
A different way to think about black hole formation, maybe.
Potentially, yes. And how stars might collapse?
And this is huge. You mentioned galaxy halos maybe not needing dark matter.
Yes, that was the memory halo formation simulation.
No.
They modeled a high-pressure core fading away, and it left behind a persistent ring of curvature in the spatial tension. It looked remarkably like the halos we see around galaxies.
So the halo isn't stuff, it's leftover shape. A memory in space.
That's the Flowfield suggestion. Residual curvature from past events or configurations. Not unseen matter, but a warp in space itself. A cosmic echo.
The shape of galaxies as a record of their past,
Yeah.
etched into space. That's
Amazing.
profound. Phase 2 finished with an energy tone steering test.
That's right. They sent a wave with a specific frequency across the field, and the pressure flows consistently followed that wave pattern.
More evidence for this field navigation idea.
Exactly. Potentially influencing energy, maybe matter, by manipulating the underlying field with frequencies.
Okay, so we're moving from understanding the basics to potential applications in phase 3. Massless gravity? Anti-gravity. This is where it starts sounding like sci-fi.
Phase 3 went right there, exploring the engineering possibilities. The artificial gravity well simulation, it created a downward pressure dome using only pressure gradients.
Pick a result.
Simulated weight, a feeling of gravity with no actual mass present. It showed massless gravity is, well, conceivable in this model.
Creating weight from the shape of space. Wow, and anti-gravity was just flipping that?
Exactly. Invert the pressure dome, upward tension instead of downward compression, and the simulation got levitation.
Silent floating.
Silent levitation, yeah. Driven purely by reversing the field's curvature.
Okay. Then there was a gyroscopic tone field, simulating inertia, resistance to motion. How?
They created a rotating wave pattern in the pressure field. This spinning field essentially simulated angular momentum, created virtual inertia.
A spatial gyroscope. What for?
Stabilization, maybe?
Right.
Or inherently stable containment fields, that kind of thing.
And the toroidal pulse drive.
Brr.
Reactionless propulsion. The dream.
It hinted at it, sending pressure pulses around a ring, creating a self-reinforcing interference pattern. Very early stages, simulation-wise.
But the potential is there.
The potential for propulsion without expelling mass, yeah.
Yeah.
By manipulating the field itself.
And phase 3 finished with containment shells with edge memory, like force fields.
Pretty much. It created a stable, empty region, low pressure, surrounded by an adaptive pressure field. This edge memory let the shell respond to outside pressure.
So force fields that can adjust themselves.
Dynamically adjust their boundaries to resist breaches, yes.
Okay, phase 1 to the 3 took us from basic physics to potential future tech.
Yeah.
Huge leap. What about phase 4? Sounded like actively shaping these fields.
Phase 4 was definitely focused on active control, sculpting the field. Standing wave containment was a really elegant one.
How did that work?
It made a stable pressure shell with no physical walls, just the precise interaction of sound-like waves reinforcing each other.
A chamber held together by a tune.
Basically, yeah, a structure stable purely due to its field configuration.
A room with no walls, just sound, powerful image. The collapse seed trigger, though, sounds less constructive.
Well, it explored the flip side of stability, introduced a tiny instability, a seed, into a stable field, showed how that tiny seed could grow and cause a larger collapse of the structure. Important for understanding singularities maybe, but also weak points in engineered fields.
Makes sense. But Phase 4 also had creation pressure-sculpted shell geometry, actively shaping space.
Exactly. Using wave interference to create specific geometric shapes in the pressure field. Cubes, domes, forms made purely of structured spatial tension.
Molding space with sound waves.
Suggests we might be able to, yeah, if we can control the sound.
What about multi-layered compression cores, storing energy in the field?
The simulations pointed that way. Layering zones of different pressures could act like memory batteries.
Holding stable states of tension. Energy storage.
Or even specific patterns of spatial memory, yeah.
And a memory pulse chain. Sending data without anything.
This simulation showed just that. A sequence of pressure pulses transmitting energy or info across space. No physical carrier needed.
Communicating or computing using the fabric of space itself.
That's the potential it opens up, theoretically.
So space isn't just a stage, it's a network, a storage device, a construction material. According to these simulations, okay, Phase V shifts big, the end of expansion, heavy stuff.
It is. Phase V tackles the biggest cosmological questions in this framework, the echo wave expansion model. Simulated universe expansion not as a simple outward burst, but a pressure wave moving through the spatial medium.
Okay, like a ripple spreading out.
Right. But crucially, it showed expansion might not go on forever. It could naturally slow down as the foam density of space increases.
Space gets thicker.
Yeah.
Harder to push through.
Essentially, yes. The fluid thickens, so the universe might slow down on its own. No need for mysterious dark energy.
Wow. A self-breaking universe. Big departure. What's the foam viscosity horizon?
That sim looked at how different viscosity levels in space-time affect pressure waves. It found a point, a horizon.
A boundary.
A boundary beyond which pressure waves couldn't propagate anymore. A natural limit to expansion, set by space's own properties.
Leading to terminal drift equilibrium, the end of expansion.
That's the prediction, yeah. The simulation modeled a point where the outward expansion echo perfectly balances the inward recoil of the field.
A theoretical still point.
The moment the universe stops expanding and reaches equilibrium.
And then this almost mystical idea. Diamond genesis chamber. Everything collapsing into a memory crystal.
The simulation visualized all the universe's tension concentrating into one highly ordered point of pressure. This quantum diamond is theorized as the ultimate storage of the field's memory, a crystal holding the compressed history of space-time.
Ending not in heat death or a crunch, but perfect order.
A highly organized state, yes. Fascinating idea.
And the last one in Phase V, time loop closure, connecting the beginning and the end.
It explored that possibility, modeled the initial expansion wave eventually meeting itself symmetrically, closing the space-time loop.
So the Big Bang and the end aren't just start and finish points on a line.
But maybe interconnected parts of a cosmic cycle, yeah.
Okay, birth to death, and maybe back again, all from pressure fields. Phase 6, even more speculative. Interuniversal interactions. Yeah. Other universes.
This phase looks at what Flowfield might say about a multiverse, yeah. The foam boundary reflection simulation modeled a pressure wave from our universe hitting the edge of the space-time foam or boundary and bouncing back.
Bouncing back, so the edge reflects.
Suggests it might act like a reflective surface for these pressure waves. Our universe might not be totally isolated.
So we could be bumping echo-wise off others? What about interuniversal echo interference?
That looked at pressure waves from two different universes interacting in a shared medium. They saw interference patterns, constructive, destructive, suggesting universes could influence each other through resonance in the underlying foam, amplify or cancel out waves.
And resonant bubble linking, connecting universes directly.
The sim showed if two pressure zones' universe cores vibrated at the same frequency, they could form a stable tone bridge.
A connection.
A direct connection via matching frequencies, like field entanglement between universes. No typical matter-energy exchange.
Just harmony, like tuning forks.
Exactly like that, affecting each other without touching.
What about tone collision boundaries? Sounds bad if universes collide.
Interestingly, no big explosion in the simulation when opposing pressure waves hit head-on.
Yes.
It created annihilation zones, yes, but also new frequencies, field distortions, more complex, less violently destructive than you might think.
And foam network synchronization, a harmonizing multiverse.
The simulations hinted that multiple echoing universes in this network could, over vast time, start synchronizing their fundamental pressure waves.
Very true.
A multiverse that's ultimately self-regulating, harmonizing through the spatial foam's dynamics.
Lined, officially, bent.
Hmm.
Phase 7 then changes track again. Local physics modification. Altering physics locally. Seriously.
That's the implication, yeah. The field memory rewrite chamber simulation. It tried to mimic the fundamental pressure waves from a distant galaxy known to have different physics.
And did it work?
The surprising result was, yes, the local field memory inside the chamber was effectively rewritten. It operated under different physical principles than the space outside.
A bubble with different rules. Gravity working differently, maybe.
Just by mimicking the sound of somewhere else in the universe? Potentially, yes.
What happened at the edge? The boundary between the rewritten space and normal space.
The pressure boundary divergence test looked at that, found stress, instability at the transition, the seam where laws change.
So maybe unstable or needs energy to maintain.
To just that, yes.
The gravitational tone collapse simulation sounds dramatic. What if you turn off gravity in this model?
The sim removed the specific pressure wave pattern for gravity inside the chamber.
And the result?
Structures inside lost cohesion, dissolved into, well, they called it inertial goo.
Inertial goo.
A state of weightlessness where fundamental forces holding matter together were disrupted.
Okay. And local time drift mapping, creating time rooms, different time flows.
They introduced a specifically phased temporal wave into the field inside a chamber, and the outcome was
Time moved differently.
the flow of time inside diverged from the flow outside, a zone with a different time rate, effectively.
Wow. Finally, phase 7, particle interaction mutation. Editing fundamental particles, electrons, photons.
The sim explored altering the tone memory associated with elementary particles, manipulating those underlying waveforms.
Look at what?
Changes in particle interactions, charge, spin, light interaction, suggesting a way to fine-tune matter's basic building blocks by tweaking the spatial field.
Okay, this went from cosmology to almost godlike potential.
Mhm.
Phase 8, recursive containment and dimensional dilation. Sounds like more reality manipulation.
It does push further down that road. The infinite room simulation used a self-repeating pressure field,
To do what?
manipulate how motion and echoes were perceived. Result, a small chamber could appear infinitely large due to a distorted spatial perception.
An illusion of infinite space. How do you keep that stable? Sounds tricky.
The boundary memory recoil simulation tackled that. Reinforce the edges with specific harmonic pressure field.
To stabilize the illusion.
Prevent the field collapsing or going haywire, yeah.
Dimensional nesting shells. Rooms within rooms, different properties, like a TARDIS or something.
Huh, sort of.
Mm.
The simulation layered these recursive chambers inside each other, showed potential for multiple distinct spatial environments in one location.
Each with its own physics.
Potentially, yes.
And the spatial drift mirror loop. Endless corridors.
That sim built a spatial loop using pressure field manipulation, created the perception of endless movement, though the path eventually returned.
A seamless, infinite-seeming pathway in a finite field. Pure illusion engineering.
You could put it that way.
And the last one. Pressure void entanglement nodes. Disconnecting from normal space-time.
It explored connecting an isolated field to a region of minimal pressure and energy, an entropy sink.
And the idea was?
That these isolated fields could potentially maintain stability, maybe even bypass external time by anchoring to this fundamental stillness?
Anchoring to stillness. Okay. So across these 8 incredible simulation phases. Wow. From rethinking gravity to manipulating reality, artificial spaces, maybe other universes, breathtaking scope. Let's just quickly recap the text summary of the hypothesis itself. Key ideas.
Yeah, the summary really hammers home the core. Gravity from spatial tension, not just mass attraction.
Right.
Points out how large-scale structures, filaments, galaxy pathways might be these tension lanes or flow corridors.
Natural structures in the field.
Exactly. And it reiterates the galaxy halo idea arising from compressed space geometry, not needing dark matter.
An alternative explanation built right in. Did it mention observational tests? Ways to check this.
Yes, several predictions, like finding lensing, light bending in apparently empty space caused by tension variations.
Okay.
Also, spiral galaxy rotation speed correlating with geometric compression patterns within them, not unseen mass.
A different way to explain those rotation curves.
And finally, that the large galaxy filaments should show dynamic evolution over time, like you'd expect from a fluid medium.
So the fundamental takeaway, space isn't just the box things happen in.
Exactly. Flowfield says space is an active player, a medium with properties like tension, pressure, even memory. It changes everything.
The structures, the movements we see, just emergent behaviors of this underlying spatial field.
That's the proposal.
Okay. So wrapping up this deep dive, the Flowfield hypothesis is, well, revolutionary.
Yeah.
Space, not empty, but a dynamic, pressure-filled medium. This pressure creates gravity, shapes cosmic structures, maybe even underlies physical laws. It offers an alternative to dark matter via spatial tension dynamics.
Right.
And introduces these incredible concepts, space memory, universes interacting via sound, potentially engineering space itself.
Precisely. The real aha moments for me are things like massless gravity,
Yeah.
space remembering past events, universes maybe talking through vibrations,
Right.
and the wild idea of tweaking local physics by changing the field memory.
It really forces you to rethink, well, everything about the universe.
Yeah.
If space isn't passive, if it's an active participant, what does that mean?
For cosmology, for future tech like propulsion, maybe for our basic concept of reality.
Yeah. It paints a picture where the silence of space isn't empty, where pressure and tension are the hidden keys.
Which leaves us with a really profound question for you, the listener, to think about. What if that silence isn't empty? What if it's a symphony waiting to be understood? Composed not just of matter and energy, but of the intricate pressures and tensions in the fabric of existence itself.
What melodies might we find if we could learn how to listen to the sound of space?